Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. I hope that you are enjoying this Astana International Forum this year. And we are very excited to have this panel session and to really have the climate-related issues as part of the program. This ministerial meeting this year is a very special year. First of all, we're going to have the 30th COP in Brazil. We're going to celebrate this year the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Last year, we have concluded the negotiations and discussions on new quantitative collective goal, NCQG, which is very important. And this year, we are updating our national determined contributions. And of course, that is the reason why it is so much important to have further discussions on basically how we are going to implement and accelerate our climate actions going further. This ministerial meeting has been organized with a partnership between different parties, including the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan, United Nations Development Program, which is our very long-standing partner, and another partner, which is a project office for Central Asia on climate change and green energy. This is a new center that has been established with the initiative of the President and is established to promote concrete actions on climate. This ministerial meeting is very important to promote regional climate action and cooperation, but also as our contribution to global goals of the Paris Agreement, which, as I said, is reaching its 10th anniversary. The overarching objective of the meeting is to enable countries from the region to prepare for the conference of the parties in November this year in Belém, Brazil, but also for preparing and submitting this year new national determined contributions. This is also a part of our preparation for the Regional Ecological Summit that is going to take place next year with the initiative of President Tokayev that he mentioned yesterday during his opening speech. And the reason is that we actually want to make sure that going forward we have very concrete plans and very concrete actions on what we want to do, how we want to do, and when we want to do certain activities. Climate change impacts the core of human well-being, threatening water access, food security, public health, and environmental stability. Hundreds of millions of people globally could face hunger, water shortages, and coastal flooding as temperature rises. According to the 2024 report of the Independent High-Level Expert Group on Climate Finance, failure to act could cost at least 5% of global GDP annually, rising to 20% or more when broader risks are included. In contrast, early action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions can limit costs to around 1% of global GDP per year. Investment decisions made in the next 10 to 20 years are critical and will shape the climate and economies of the second half of this century. A strong economic case exists for immediate coordinated action, especially in developing and climate-vulnerable regions. And Central Asia faces significant climate risks, as President Tokayev yesterday mentioned. We face the rise of our temperature in the region twice faster of the global average. But at the same time, when we're looking at the climate finance, accessibility of the climate finance, unfortunately, less than 1% of global climate financing is going to this part of the world and to this region. And therefore, having these discussions with the ministries who are leading the economic and financial issues is so much critical. This is a timely moment to have this discussion, especially given that this year we are updating our national determined contributions, and we are seeing the new NDCs not just as a plan or a blueprint of what we want to do. We are seeing it as an investment. It has to be an investment plan. It has to really indicate how much investments, where and when we need to make sure that our climate ambitions really translate into very concrete actions. Today's session at the Astana International Forum is a key milestone for the countries from Central Asia that are represented here to align climate ambition with economic policy, mobilize climate finance and accelerate green investments, foster regional cooperation among ministries of economy, financial institutions and development partners. And we definitely would like to, we hope that this discussion will facilitate further dialogue in terms of identifying our further financial plans for the region, but also as part of the preparation for the Regional Ecological Summit in 2026, where hopefully we would be able to come up with a very concrete regional and joint actions that will facilitate our further actions in climate. And without further ado, I would like now to pass the floor, give this floor to Mr. Haoliang Shu, the UNDP Associate Administrator, who will speak about raising ambition of climate action and accelerating delivery of climate finance towards COP30 and beyond. Mr. Shu, we would really appreciate to hear about what are the opportunities and incentives for Central Asian countries for accelerated climate action, but also how we can work with our partners to make sure that we are able to achieve our carbon neutrality strategies and goals while also, let's say, attracting climate finance into the region.
Thank you very much, Zofia. Really happy to join this discussion, and thank you very much to the government of Kazakhstan for inviting us to be a partner of this discussion. And I'm also feel very privileged to be among the esteemed panelists, who are senior and experienced practitioners and officials, in this field of climate action, and also esteemed participants, who are all very passionate about this subject. And I think we know the context of this discussion. Last year was the hottest year, that's recorded in history. And the last month was confirmed as the second hottest month, April, on record. So I think that the climate is become part of our climate change has become part of our life. It's a fact. The scientific fact is unquestionable, unequivocal. So I think this is a reality. At the same time, the global multilateralism is under immense strain, and that affects the global cooperation that is necessary to deal with the challenges, global challenges such as climate change. So in short, this is the context, and I think we all agree that we are facing quite serious challenges if we want to address the issue, as we have dealt with the ozone layer challenges, which we successfully addressed. So global action can make a difference. I think that is the first message. Despite all these challenges, we need effective global collaboration. So this is one. Now, I do want to touch on the two issues Zofia mentioned. One is ambition. Right? This year is the year of COP30, where the third generation of NDCs needs to be submitted. Right? The COP26 in Glasgow, where the second generation of NDCs was submitted, I think it's fair in a simplistic way to say that we achieved perhaps the goal of 2.5-degree world with that second generation of NDCs. UNDP's Climate Promise Program at that time supported 120 countries, developing countries, to develop their second generation of NDCs. But we know that level of ambition is not sufficient. I think, again, in general terms, the 30th COP, right, the third generation of NDCs, needs to deliver the 1.5-degree goal, although it's difficult, elusive. But that has to be the level of our ambition, right, to the third generation of ambitious goals to deliver that 1.5-degree world as much as we can. Right. So the good news is that 180 countries have committed to submit their second generation or third generation of NDCs So that's good news. But clearly, for that to happen, to really have a real impact, we need concrete actions. So in this regard, Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General have asked the UN country teams in developing countries across the world to support our governments to develop the third generation of NDCs, where this support is needed. So at this time, I think UN country teams, especially technically, with the NDP's Climate Promise Initiative, is supporting, I believe, more than 80 countries, probably 86 countries, developing countries to develop the new set of NDCs, to improve the ambition, not only mitigation, adaptation, but in terms of quality, participation, means of implementation, realistic implementation, methods. So this work is underway. So I think it's really important that we see this, as Sophia said, it's not just a plan, it is an economic growth opportunity as well. So some estimates say that if we enhance our NDCs, it will generate at least $300 billion a year by the year 2040. Now, if that's true, it is almost the size of Kazakhstan's GDP today. Right? So economic case is also very strong. So NDC implementation, climate actions, green energy transitions are opportunities for economic growth. So this is the first point. The level of ambitions has to be really high. We cannot miss this COP30 as an opportunity to renew our high level of ambition. And the second point, very quickly, is on just one data point on this NDCs, is that in the CIS and the Eastern European region, in Central Asia, this UN support is provided to 15 countries and territories in Western Balkans, South Caucasus, and Central Asia, where Montenegro and Moldova have already submitted their new NDCs. Right? So the rest is still ongoing. Right? So this is about ambition. The second point, very quickly, is about climate finance. We have the chair of the COP29 on the panel, who can speak with more authority on this issue. But I think the significance of the COP29 is that in addition to the new collective quantified goal on climate finance, right, this principle, right, we have specific targets of achieving $300 billion of climate finance a year by 2035 and aiming for $1.3 trillion. And we know that in the Paris Agreement, in the NDC discussions, developing countries have set two sets of goals. One is on their own device, by their own efforts. One is with international cooperation. In the case of Kazakhstan, if I remember correctly, I think Kazakhstan aims to cut carbon emissions by 25%. Based according to the 1995 level, if with international support. Without international support, that goal was set at 15%. So it just shows that climate finance is critical for us to achieve our collective goals of levels of ambition. So what can we do about it? Public finance is not sufficient. Right? So we need innovative financing solutions, blended financing, leveraging of public financing to achieve these financial goals. Now, we have some good efforts and good examples. I think Kazakhstan offers a good example because in Kazakhstan, the green finance is now recognized in the second generation of NDCs already, right? And working together with the government, with the Kazakhstan's fund, for entrepreneurship, long-standing fund, DAMU fund, right? And we have also developed Kazakhstan's first green bond issuance, and we also have developed this national green taxonomy, right, as a legal basis, for other, related climate actions. And since 2017, the NDP, fortunately, with the support of GEF, GCF, Climate Adaptation Fund, and other climate financing, we have worked with partners in Kazakhstan to have leveraged $713 million of private financing for climate action. So we can achieve our goals if we think out of the box. And also, over the last few years in Kazakhstan, working with government institutions, and I think the total green bond issuance has now totaled more than $250 million. So we can take actions for climate action. And another innovative ways that require very careful discussion and careful organization and support is high integrity carbon markets, right? Also as a result of the COP29 discussion. Right? So there are these areas where the international support will be needed. In Uzbekistan, for example, as in some other countries, we have worked with the government to develop Sharia compliant Islamic financing initiatives. The NDP does have a global Islamic finance and impact investing platform. Right? In Uzbekistan, we're discussing with the government on Sharia compliant instruments for climate action. So there are significant demand for climate financing, and working together, I think we can make a difference. And if we can align goals, financing, and the quality governance delivery systems together, I think we can make significant progress in climate action. So with these 2 points, I just want to say that partnership, multilateral approach remains simply critical. Right? And this Astana International Forum provides an opportunity for us to renew our commitment. And UNDP and the whole UN system at global, regional, and national level stands ready to continue the collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shu. I absolutely agree that NDC is just a plan if it is not supported by the means of implementation, and there should be very clear understanding of that. You also mentioned about the quality governance and partnerships, about their importance. Indeed, when we speak about, including when we speak about investments or climate finance, green bonds, and so on, these initiatives cannot be supported if there is no favorable governance structures, favorable legal environment. And this brings us to the next part of our discussion, that is the governments, and we'll be very happy to hear about what the Central Asian countries are doing to basically create this favorable environment to attract climate finance or to leverage, let's say, private financing and direct it into the climate action. We have one speaker who is running from a different meeting at the moment, so I think we will push him for a little bit later. But now I would like to give this floor to Mr. Babaniyaz Yalakov, who is the Deputy Minister of Finance and Economy of Turkmenistan. And we'll be very happy to hear about the present and the, let's say, planned future climate actions of Republic of Turkmenistan and the steps that are being taken to prepare the NDC for the NDC submissions. We would also be very happy to hear about how you're integrating this climate planning into the national economic planning, but also what are your, let's say, short-term, mid-term, and long-term is not part of the NDC, but still a long-term planning for the climate.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I would like to sincerely welcome you and take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the government of Republic of Kazakhstan and the Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Nisanbayev, for invitation to participate in the meeting of Finance and Economy Ministers of Central Asian countries. I wish all participants successful work and fruitful meetings within the framework of this event. I express my hope that this meeting will open borders, prospects and opportunities to business-like exchanges of views on climate policy and climate financing, and will give a new impetus to the further development of productive and mutually beneficial regional cooperation. For our country, cooperation with the Central Asian region is one of the key areas of interaction. We are active partners in such platforms as UN Special Program of the Economics of Central Asia, Central Asian Regional Economic Cooperation Program, Economic Cooperation Organizations, and Commonwealth of Independent States, and others. We highly value the mutual understanding established between our countries, which helps us expand business and economic ties year after year. I would like to note that despite of measures being taken at both of the national and regional levels, a number of challenges remaining in Central Asia that require joint systemic efforts and actions focused on sustainable development. Central Asia is one of the world's most vulnerable regions to climate change and is facing its negative consequences, including land degradation, water scarcity, and increased climate vulnerability. The average annual temperature in our region is rising faster than the global average. Over the past 70 years, it has increased by 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius, which is significantly higher than the global average. According to experts, by 2050, the temperature in the regional may increase by another 2 or 3 degrees, leading to intensified droughts and extreme weather events. Climate change in Central Asia is causing land degradation, reduced agricultural productivity, and threats to food security. More than 60% of land is affected by desertification, droughts, floods, and sandstorms are becoming more frequent. Unique ecosystems such as Aral Sea, mountain forests, and steppes are under threat. Turkmenistan pays special attention to climate change issues and their impact on the economy, including by strengthening international cooperation and implementing new projects in this field. The country is implementing large-scale programs aimed at advancing climate action. We actively support international efforts in this area and are active participants in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. Within the framework of Turkmenistan's National Climate Change Strategy updated in 2019, our efforts are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to climate change. The national strategy formed the basis for the development of Turkmenistan's national determined contribution approved by the President in May 2022. Work on updating our aforementioned NDC is currently ongoing and is expected to be completed this year. In recent years, the carbon intensity of production in Turkmenistan has steadily decreasing. I will also like to inform you that Turkmenistan, with the support of United Nations Development Program and the United Nations Environment Program, is finalizing its fourth national communication on climate change and its biennial update report to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. By 2030, economic growth will be accompanied by a decrease in energy intensity per unit of GDP. The country is actively implementing adaptation measures for forest restoration and improved land use. As part of the national program titled Green Belt, extensive forest strips have emerged around cities, and they are fed thanks to advanced water-saving irrigation techniques. At the 28th COP session in 2023, the President of Turkmenistan announced the country's accession to the Global Methane Pledge and expressed Turkmenistan readiness to continue cooperation with international organizations and partner states in this direction. On November 1st, 2024, the Cabinets of Ministers of Turkmenistan adopted a 2025-2026 roadmap to strengthen Turkmenistan's international cooperation towards achieving global methane reduction targets. To particularly implement to the roadmap, a comprehensive plan of action was developed and approved for close cooperation with international partners, including the UNFCCC Secretariat, UN specialized agencies, and European Union, OSCE, IRENA, and the World Bank and Asian Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and other organizations. Work is underway to develop a joint program for methane emission reduction between the government of Turkmenistan and United Nations for the period of 2025-2029. In order to unite the global efforts in addressing challenges of RLC Basin, the country is actively pursuing its initiative aimed at creating the United Nations Special Program for the RLC Basin. At the 79th session of United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific in May 2023, a resolution titled Consideration of the Modalities for the Establishment of the United Nations Program for RLC Basin was unanimously adopted in a testament to the international community's support for government's initiatives. One of the key priorities is the integration of environmentally friendly modes of transport into daily life. As part of our efforts toward decarbonization, we are actively promoting the electrification of transport. Adapting transport system to climate change is an important direction in the development of transport infrastructure. Dear ladies and gentlemen, to activate regional cooperation and mobilize resources for the implementation of climate projects in the region, including projects aimed at introduction climate resilient solutions and the rational and fair use of water resources, it is necessary to expand sources of financing. The most important source of funding remain the national resources of our states, which support innovative projects for emission reduction and climate adaptation, as well as government programs to support green technologies and energy-efficient solutions. It is essential to expand public-private partnership in the implementation of climate projects. At the same time, we consider it's important to attract grant funding and investment from international donors. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that the modern world is in search of new forms and mechanisms of development financing that will be more effective and innovative. A high level of integration of national priorities with the Sustainable Development Goals requires each of our countries to invest adequately and create the most favorable conditions for doing so. This will make it possible to ensure strong partnerships and pave the way into the future without leaving anyone behind. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yalakov. It's very exciting to hear what Turkmenistan has been doing and is doing. I actually realized while you were speaking that I did not introduce myself. And there is one very interesting story very much related to Turkmenistan. My name is Ulfiya Suleymanova. I am advisor to the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan and his special representative on international environmental cooperation. But before I came to Kazakhstan civil service, it just happens that I was working with UNDP in Turkmenistan. So this is a very special event for me, and I'm very happy to host both UNDP and Turkmenistan at this session. Thank you very much for sharing. And next, I would like to give this floor to Bakıt Sıdıkov, Minister of Economy and Commerce of the Kyrgyz Republic. And we would be very happy to hear about the efforts of your country. We know that very recently you hosted a big event on the mountain agenda. We see that Kyrgyzstan is very active in this in these discussions, and we'll be very happy to hear, very interested to hear about what you are doing in terms of updating your NDC, but also really attracting climate finance.
Many thanks. On behalf of the Kyrgyz Republic, let me just express my deepest gratitude for the opportunity to deliver some speech and share my thoughts in here. It has been 10 years since the conclusion of the Paris Agreement, the most important document actually, which set the beginning of a new epoch of addressing the climate change issues, the climate change challenges. And we are facing today a new task to rethink our way, our road, to infer some necessary lessons and to set probably a new vector for the next decades. We are the Kyrgyz Republic as a mountainous country which is vulnerable to climate risks. We stay committed to our international commitments. Over the last 10 years, we achieved certain kind of accomplishments. Let me just stop over on some important ones. In 2021, we actually updated our NDC, which was approved in 2021, whereby we actually uplifted our ambition. We set our carbon reduction at from initial 36.1% to we set the ambition of 36.6% by 2030, and we are aiming at almost 45% in 2050. We are currently updating this NDC, and we plan to present it next year. We tried to incorporate our lessons we just got from the previous NDC 2021. The implications, the conclusions are the necessity to approach the climate issue, the NDC, in a more complex way, number one. Then the NDC should be strongly tied to our social economic development agenda, of course. We want to have NDC which actually involves more active engagement of our regional regions, the private sector, and non-commercial sector as well. Recently, we also approved our national green taxonomy. So we had a nice, not nice, but very much productive and helpful assistance from IFIs, including the World Bank Group and other IFIs. The agenda, the taxonomy aims at setting a uniform uniform understanding and determination of green technologies, projects, and goods and services. And finally, ultimately, we aim at creating a stimulus and necessary conditions for attracting investments in green projects and green businesses. What else? We are also working on updated the second national green economy program up to 2028, and on top of it, we are working on approval of the national adaptation plan. With regard to the climate financing and financing the climate transformation, so according to our calculations, the overall cost of decreasing our carbon emission reaches up to $4.5 billion for the Kyrgyz Republic. To transit effectively and efficiently to low carbon and climate resilient economy, so we need more simplified, number one, of course, more simplified access to climate financing, which is being provided by MDBs and IFIs. It is not needed to say that, so I think most of you know that the procedures to getting finance for the climate projects are quite cumbersome. They require some time, validation, so there are lots of procedures. This is not a peculiar situation for the Kyrgyz Republic. Probably we need to also think over simplification, the process of getting finance for the climate change or the climate finance. We also, as a country, we feel that we need to work more on creating a more comfortable environment for PPPs in climate finance. Including the sectors such as agricultural sector, tourism, the role of digitalization in ensuring effective, efficient financing for climate change also requires good work on digitalization. And finally, we also strongly need in setting the national mechanism for the green financing. My country experience shows that since we are dealing with a bit unknown agenda, the climate change, the green economy, lots of players, they feel themselves a bit, how do I say, not lost, but puzzled. Number one, we need to set, as a government, probably we need to set clear, uniform, understandable rules. Institutions and rules of the game in between them, internally, inside the country, so that to effectively interact with the external players, MDBs, IFIs, international organizations. The Kyrgyz Republic also pays great attention to the regional cooperation and concerted efforts of the countries, the better coordinated on the regional level when approaching the climate change issues. We are committed by nature. We share borders, natural, rivers, sea coast. So this means we need strong cooperation and coordination. So what else? I think these are the most important things I would like to stress your attention on. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadikov. I actually really liked how you said that in Kyrgyzstan you're trying to rethink the pathway of development, considering the climate-related issues. Because indeed, when we speak about climate, I think very traditionally we think that, oh, this is something to do with environmental ministries. But actually it is not. If we want to become successful in terms of development and economic growth, we really have to consider climate-related issues. First, we have to mitigate, because, and you also mentioned about the adaptation, which is very critical. Unfortunately, sometimes also there are lots of attention put on adaptation, on the importance of adaptation. But then again, if we fail to mitigate our carbon emissions, then we have to put more money into adaptation and more money into losses and damages. This is basically the situation. It's a lose-lose situation. So we really have to be thinking about rethinking the way how we are dealing with these issues, and I really appreciate that in Kyrgyzstan you are taking this issue very seriously. You also mentioned about the importance of simplified access to climate financing from the MDBs. This is very spot-on issue. One of the very important things that we were discussing during last year's COP29 is actually the financial architecture, and whether the existing financial architecture provides us with the necessary access to climate financing. But one thing that we have been, for example, raising during those discussions is not only about the accessibility of financial resources, but also their affordability. Because whenever we are speaking with the private sector, they say, can you give us long-term affordable money? Because if the money is unaffordable or very expensive, there is very little use of this kind of money. I mean, if we want to accelerate the action, then we really have to think about how fast and how affordable is the money that we are dispersing. And with that, I would like to kind of proceed to our next speaker. But before I do so, speaking of the affordability and accessibility of climate financing, one of the existing instruments is Green Climate Fund, which provides concessional climate financing to countries like ours. And of course, there has been lots of discussions about the necessity in reforming this important institution. And I would like to really invite now to speak the Deputy Minister of National Economy of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Arman Kasenov, who is not only Deputy Minister, but who is also a board member of Green Climate Fund from the Asia-Pacific region, to really share with us what Kazakhstan is doing, but also what will be our strategy as Kazakhstan in GCF in terms of really making sure that our region is not overshadowed in climate access related issues, and that our region can get access to very necessary and very important GCF funding.
Dear Zulfiya Bulatovna, thank you so much for I would like to express gratitude to all of you, and I would like to express gratitude for visiting Astana and being here, participating in this discussion. This is very important in finding the ways of solution. Thank you so much for coming here. Dear ladies and gentlemen, as it had been already identified Central Asia as one of the vulnerable regions for the climate change, and only last 2 decades, according to the estimates of the World Bank, aggregate economical damage from the catastrophic damages, it had already touched upon 2.5 million people. So that is why all of the transformation of the economical models and the escalating modernization, as well as the clean technologies development and development of the new areas of the sustainable development. President Mr. Tokayev had already identified the Regional Climate Summit in 2026, identifying regional. I would like to highlight the regional. And this initiative had been supported by all of the countries from region. Thank you so much. We are considering this summit as not just an event, as the process of the interaction in frames of which we need to identify the consolidated steps with clear priorities and mechanisms of financing which had been already highlighted. Ministry of Economy and Finance of the regions are going to play key roles for the speeding up to the low carbon emitting technologies as well as the sectors. We need these measures which will create new jobs and economical growth, ensure the economical growth in terms of new economy. Kazakhstan had already implemented steps. First, developed the new green technology that is already covering 11 sectors, had identified the biggest market of sustainable financing, which amounts to more than $1 billion, which is $1.3 billion, which has sustainable stocks and credits. Third, we had already started the stocks with the voluntary exchange of the carbons. We had also identified the NDCs in terms of the Paris Agreement. The next step is the deeper institutionalization of the climate financing through regional and national tools as platforms, funds, strategies, where the governments would participate together with the private sector. Preparation to the Summit 2026 is coordinated by the Office on the Green Energy for Central Asia, which had been identified by the initiative, which had been established by the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Tokayev. Together with all of the ministers and the countries of the regions, we had been cooperating in order to identify the mechanisms of the financing with the possibility for allocating it for the regional financing and regional initiatives with the analysis, regional partnership on energy transition. We are confident that this kind of platforms will not only enhance the visibility of the region, but also will attract the investments. It will also become the tool of the coordination on implementation of new R&D ambitious national distributions, NDC 3.0, which will be presented at COP30 in Brazil. And of course, all of these mechanisms will need implementation. We, as the Ministry of National Economy, we realize that clear agenda shall not be only on the paper. In order to implement it, we need clear mechanisms for enhancing the institutionalization and readiness of the countries, as well as mechanisms that could be implemented. Now I would like to address in English.
Financial institutions and development agencies, such as the World Bank, ADB, EBRD, and others, play a hugely important role. They bring to the table tools, analytics, experience necessary to support countries in building climate-resilient, low-carbon economies. It is through partnerships with such institutions and agencies we can build a robust climate finance architecture for the region, one that combines international resources, such as those agreed at COP29 last year in Baku, public investment, and private sector participation. Today, nearly 70% of the region's climate investment needs remain unfunded. Without systemic, collaborative action, we will not be able to close the gap. We believe that contributions of development partners through technical assistance, guarantees, and de-risking mechanisms can help us jointly advance the goals of COP30 and lay a strong foundation for ambitious and actionable outcomes at the 2026 Regional Climate Summit.
At the end, I would like to also talk about practice. Well, indeed, everything that we stumble upon in a reality, we would like to implement investment projects that would allow us to decrease the emissions. What holds us? In reality, what holds us back? The lack of projects. You know that the business itself, it doesn't want to indicate some of the projects. Maybe they would like to, but they don't know how to do it. So that is why international organizations might help us out with this. We would like to have guidelines, clear instructions, or guiding principles. We would like to have projects so that we could come to large projects and we could say, so these are your investment opportunities in order to decrease the emissions of this and this and that. So, and then we would be in top 500 large companies, let's say. And the companies of Kazakhstan can collect concrete projects. So let's say international organizations will help us out. And the most important thing is not the finances, is the experience and knowledge how to do it. I know that we can collect to tens of billions of dollars. And this would be the first step in order to sufficiently enhance and escalate the investments. So that is why I'd like to ask you to provide guidelines. I think this is going to be the clear step in order to implement here on behalf of the Ministry of National Economy, on behalf of the ministries that are responsible for the economy. So we would like to cooperate with you, interact with you, as it had been already highlighted. We are not only passionate about economy growth, we're also passionate about saving the environment. We had already developed, and it's on a deep level, the roadmap, and we would like to support these initiatives, finance those initiatives. And we're looking forward to cooperate with you and start scaled up investments. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your words, remarks. I would like to add a couple of things here. So in order to collect the pool of the projects, according to our practice, is not that easy, but it is very important to do so. So whenever we say that NDC 3.0, that this is something that we need to develop, whenever we had been talking with partners, we had elaborated that we would like to have investment plan, because we need to understand where, how much, and where we would take it. Another thing that we had already elaborated on is the mitigation, adaptation to the climate change. These issues are something that we always focus on issues when we talk about investments, on concrete projects, on certain projects. But when it comes to Kazakhstan, for example, all of the emissions is from energy sector. 80% of it comes from energy sector. So whenever we say energy transition, the justice is the most important issue. We are creating new jobs, like in the cities, like mono cities, let's say, the cities that depend on one industry. Let's say Temirtau. It's the coal production. Zhanaozen, production, extraction of oil. Whenever we talk about, let's say, no to coal, for example, okay. I come to citizens of Temirtau, which would put bread onto their table just thank to the coal, of course they won't understand it. But exactly at those places, we need to create alternative workplaces, alternative industries. What kind of industries it's going to be? Of course, it will need investments. Of course, it will need some surveys, requalification, education. These are the aspects that we don't really touch upon. So maybe we need to create something new in order to substitute the conventional energy extraction and generation. It is really interesting moment whenever we talk about it. If the family is earning $1,000 per month, and then we would say, dear colleagues, we are closing this shaft, and you cannot really be there, work there, and you're going to go to another company, and you're going to earn there $600. Probably people won't understand me. So whenever we talk about investment and fair, just transition, it is really important issues. We need to create workplaces which will be equivalent in a payment and maybe paid even higher rather than former workplaces. So whenever we are implementing energy transition, decarbonization, net zero initiatives, we don't want to alienate the population.
The just energy transition, as Arman mentioned, the country platforms would be very critical. Speaking of which, we know that in the world there was a number of just energy transition partnerships, actually 4 of them. We heard about the latest news. There are many questions about the JETPs, but we also know that a number of countries have established the just energy transition country platforms that also help to leverage additional international and other and public financing to really support the transition. Our president a number of times mentioned that Kazakhstan would be interested to establish such a platform, and following his initiative, we have established a working group on just energy transition, on creating the just energy transition country platform that is being led by the Ministry of Energy with active participation of all other government agencies, but also international financial institutions. And we know that the World Bank and other financial institutions are playing very active role. And one of the key issues is how we can attract through this country platform, more investments and especially affordable money. And we would be very happy to hear about what the World Bank is doing in this regard, how you see the further actions. But also there is one more thing that I really would like to mention. The World Bank has an amazing platform called CIF, Climate Investment Funds. We had very interesting discussions with them, and so far CIF is the institution which provides the most concessional money, and we would be very happy to learn more how we as a region can cooperate with CIF, attract their catalyzing financial resources to really support our transition. And with this, I'm really sorry, and with this I would like to give this floor to Andrei Mikhnyev, permanent representative of the World Bank to Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan.
Thank you very much, Zulfiya, and thank you very much for everyone who is attending this session, which is really, I see great interest, and thank you for organizers and distinguished panelists. 2 great discussion that we already started. So let me elaborate on your question, but also give some key messages I believe is important for all of us to remember and take away from this session. I think one of the important things is that all the speakers here are talking about climate actions. So really the actions, very specific actions. And it's very well fit the overall Astana International Forum agenda that we need to shape the future. So we don't need to continue discussion about what was in the past, but really looking forward and how it could be done. climate financing is really one of the important issues. But let me start from the position that we also very share that for Central Asia particularly, the climate agenda becoming more and more important because of climate risks which going across all 5 countries, including water stress, glacier loss, land degradation, economic vulnerability. So it's all really putting Central Asia and the kind of highlights of the global discussions, how it could be done. Fortunately, there is a strong leadership in the region, and we feel it as an international financial institution that there is a ownership here. So countries really looking seriously at national determined contribution. Moreover, develop a long-term low-carbon development strategy, and then also specific roadmaps how to implement that. That's already very specific work to do. I like very much that what the minister from the Kyrgyz Republic was saying, that the climate agenda is not about climate, and Zulfiya, you also mentioned that. It's about country development. It's very much linked to what we believe as a overall development for the country. In this regard, the World Bank has been using a great analytical tool, which is called Country Climate and Development Reports. It's actually been recently completed for countries, and that supports very much what leaders in these countries are saying. Like just an example of Kazakhstan, where the report is particularly focusing on challenges of decarbonization of its energy system under the Just Transition program. And that's what we believe is important to ensure that the just transition, it's not just happening mechanically. But also we see in the region the rise of different catastrophes and natural disaster. So creating mechanisms like catastrophic insurance and disaster risk management is becoming important issue for all the countries, and of course from our side we are really much would like to focus on that exercise. And thank you also for mentioning from the Deputy Minister of Finance of Turkmenistan our joint work with the UN system there to address the climate resilient agenda, especially as far as methane emission reduction is concerned. So for climate financing, moving to the climate financing, indeed, it requires scaling up financing. It's not depends only on the international finance resources, of course, but I would like to be sure that we understand that there should be mechanism for attracting private sector for the climate financing, because it's not possible only for public sector or international partners to address the overall issues that we are facing in the climate financing. So the private sector investment would be important. So from our perspective, I think to raise more climate finance, we have certain recommendations. Let me just kind of mention a few of that. First is to implement national policy to reduce emissions and build resilience. This is the key to mobilizing private sector investment by creating incentives in investing in low emission and climate resilient technologies and processes. Second, developed integrated investment plans with both climate and sectoral goals, as well as national disaster risk financing and catastrophe insurance strategies. Third, mainstream climate in the budgeting, public investment, and financial sector regulations. Fourth, strengthen the enabling environment, including taxonomies, like Deputy Minister from Kazakhstan mentioned, already been done in Kazakhstan. Sustainability reporting, disclosure, and climate risk regulation. Fifth, establish green investment platform. That's exactly what you mentioned. And the sixth, we believe in this particular region, they're using the state-owned enterprise and banks is also very important to guide the market and reduce investment uncertainty, demonstrating why green investment are a good bet. How we from the World Bank can help? We're actually already working very, very intensively. One very good example how to really put better incentives for the private sector to invest in low carbon technology is emission trading system, which in Kazakhstan exists. However, I think the work is now being in the progress on reducing the limits, which are very generous and not allowing the both state-owned enterprises and private sector to invest in the decarbonization, long-term carbonization. In such countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyz Republic, The World Bank is supporting transformational projects which will affect the whole region. Those like Kambarata 1 hydropower plant in Kyrgyz Republic, and also Ragun hydropower plant in Tajikistan. What's important, it's actually addressing the issue not only sustainable and renewable energy, but also better water management and water efficiency in the region. In addition to that, what I think we are doing a lot as a World Bank Group, including International Finance Corporation, is really looking at other sources of energy, solar, wind, geothermal. I think this is a good potential to work on that. In this regard, just to conclude, I want to say that as we look forward toward COP30 in Brazil, I believe Central Asia could not only raise its ambition, but really using this platform to raise resources, institutions, and coalitions needed for deliver result. I think what you mentioned, some kind of regional climate finance platform, could be really for Central Asia serve as a hub. It can raise the profile of the region and its opportunities, mobilize blended finance, and attract international investment to regional green project. So from our side, we see the resilience to climate resilience, decarbonization agenda is really priority, and we are very much committed to expanding our support to countries in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Indeed, climate change is becoming more pressing to our part of the world, and one of the very interesting challenges that we started speaking more about is the Caspian Sea and how we see the climate change impacts on the state of the Caspian Sea. Unfortunately, from what I've read from the latest scenarios, the climate change will continue the, let's say, desiccation of the Caspian Sea, and this is very pressing, very important, not only in terms of environment, but also in terms of socioeconomic development of the regions whose livelihood depends on the sea. And with that, I would be very happy to hear from our, I would say Azerbaijani colleague in this sense, but actually from COP29 President Mukhtar Babayev. I know that last year you've handled a huge task of negotiating NCQG and other issues. I mean, there was also finally a solution, a decision on Article 6 on the carbon 6.4 on the carbon market, but NCQG specifically is something that is very closely linked to what we are discussing. We know that there is a Baku Belem roadmap, and we'll be very happy to hear more about its implementation and how we can work together in making it into action.
Thank you. Thank you, Zulfiya Khanım. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear colleagues, salam. When we visit specific islands, when we said salam or good morning, all audience said back, good morning or salam. That's why salam. Super. Zulfiya Khanım, thank you very much for this very good, interesting, very big priority for all of us, the COP30 preparation and the outcomes of COP29 is so important. I would like to little bit go to the history, the current history, new history of the climate discussions, and special thanks to you, Zulfiya Khanım. This young lady led the very important and very complicated process of transparency at the COP29. We invited Zulfiya Khanım to be the leader and co-facilitator in our program for transparency. Zulfiya Khanım, thank you very much for your support and leadership all this time. Also, our deepest thanks to all organizers, to Ministry of Environment and Mineral Resources of Kazakhstan, the government of Kazakhstan. We have very good discussions yesterday, today, and continuing to do it. I think it will be very positive and very efficient to exchange with the different positions, different priorities, messages from different countries, parties. It's so efficient to do it here. Dear colleagues, when Azerbaijan held COP29, we understood that we had a special responsibility. As the first country in our region to host COP, we had a duty to represent our communities to the world. We had to make everyone understand the challenges we face. We showed delegates the following levels of the Caspian Sea, you already mentioned, Zulfiya Khanum. We talked to them about our melting glaciers. We highlighted our heat waves and our water shortages. But we also wanted them to appreciate how we are a part of the solution. They saw the abundant wind and solar potential. They will benefit from the strategic partnership between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Azerbaijan to transfer green energy to Europe. And they welcome to the historic breakthrough that our diplomats delivered. This includes agreeing the complex rules needed to run high-integrity carbon markets, as you mentioned. It includes getting the fund for responding to loss and damage up and running. And it includes the largest ever financial pledge to come from the UN process, the Baku finance goal, to mobilize at least $300 billion a year to the developing world by 2035. Overall, these outcomes will help mobilize trillions of dollars. They also prove that countries can agree and the system can deliver. This year, climate action faces many challenges, you know very well. But we are encouraged to see that so many countries still believe in the value of the process. It is so important also to in the frame of the preparation for COP30. And we are delighted that they are still ready to invest in the multilateral system. We are eager to support our dear friends from Kazakhstan as they prepare to host us at the UN Regional Climate Summit in 2026. We are ready to share our experience and the lessons we learned. And we are excited to build on the climate partnerships we have already started. Dear colleagues, dear friends, one of the first lessons from hosting COP29 was that preparation matters. The hardest negotiations took months of groundwork. Before we reach 2026, there are several important steps that we must take. This will be essential for preparing to COP30 in Belém. Most importantly, this is a critical year for everyone to submit the next generation of climate plans, and our dear panelists already mentioned this. Under the Paris Agreement, each country must submit its NDCs to reduce emissions. We are also calling for everyone to submit their national adaptation plans to prepare for a warming world and BTR report, and our friends already mentioned it. These documents are a common framework for how we plan and report. They are the foundation of the multilateral system. They allow us to check whether we are on the track for our collective goals, and they can be critical guides for how we can support each other. We are also working hard to deliver in other key mandates. At the end of COP29, countries tasked Azerbaijan and Brazil with producing Baku to Belém roadmap. You know, it is very hard and, I think, complicated work for all the world, not only to Brazilian and Azerbaijani team. This will be a document with clear pathways and credible options for how we can scale up finance from all sources to $1.3 trillion. And we hope that it can be a useful framework for discussions and action at the upcoming Regional Climate Summit in 2026 in Kazakhstan. We believe that all-inclusive process is needed to make sure that the roadmap is appropriate to guide everyone. We will hold the next round of consultation at the Bonn Climate Change Conference in a few weeks in Germany. This will be with both countries and non-governmental stakeholders. And we welcome everyone to make their inputs. We want to know where the gaps are, and we want to hear your solutions. In the frame of the preparation to COP30, we all need to mobilize our efforts and capacities to assist our Brazilian colleagues and UNFCCC. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukhtar Muallim, for your leadership in really making COP29 a success, in making the NCQG a success, because I think I remember those negotiations. I remember we were sitting until late nights and throwing all-nighters, but it became possible thanks to the tremendous leadership that Azerbaijani team has demonstrated during those discussions. I don't really want to hold all of you from your lunch, and I would like to conclude with very few highlights. Well, we understand, and I think everyone mentioned, that increasing climate ambition requires concerted efforts from governments, international financial institutions, international organizations and key partners, private sector, and of course civil society. And having these platforms like Astana International Forum, where we can exchange, is extremely important. All participants have highlighted the importance of regional cooperation, which is really great and really in Kazakh we say is an oil to my ears. We are very happy to hear that, and it's not only because we share the borders, but we also share the challenges, and together we are a bigger market. So together we are a bigger and a better opportunity, and therefore definitely we should be really tapping on our historical close ties, but also really further foster our regional cooperation. And with that, of course, the Regional Ecological Summit that will be held in partnership with the United Nations and other international organizations like OECD, IEA, IRENA, and others was designed and was thought and conceptualized as an opportunity for us as a region to really think about very concrete actions that we would like to take and endorse during the regional summit, so that we as a region can better position ourselves globally in the future. The question, I think it was also raised that where the public sector financing is very critical, but definitely public sector financing should not be competing with the private sector financing. Rather, public financing should be used to de-risk and create more favorable environment, so that the private sector can also follow. We also spoke very briefly, but I would like to stop on this. We're facing at the moment the triple planetary crisis, which is climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss, and all these processes are happening at unprecedented rates. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we are reversing this trend. And that, of course, requires a lot of joint efforts and really horizontal integration within the governments and also across the border. And I'm very happy, this is the first time actually in Central Asia that we are hosting ministers of ecology. You see, we are so much used to have ministers of ecology and environment in these discussions that I am finding very difficult to bring the word economy and finance. But this is the first time when we are having these ministers to join the discussions on climate action, and the importance of bringing and leveraging more climate finance. I hope that this is the first one, but not the last one, hopefully, and we will continue these discussions, and hopefully by 2026, when our leaders will convene at the Regional Ecological Summit here in Kazakhstan, we will have very concrete roadmap in terms of how we would like, where we see the opportunities to mobilize climate and green finance, and how we want to proceed with our climate action. And with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining our session today. I wish you the best of luck and enjoy the rest of the Astana International Forum, and please have a good networking opportunities. Thank you.